What up, David?
Hey, man. Oh, hey, Chris. I had to look for the yellow line. Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. Just wanted to say hi. Yeah.
So Chris Josephs gets a good entrance there. Nice effect coming in with the door. Mike, we were just talking about how much we like your white beard. Like, really digging it.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, we talk about
Thank
you
you
when you're not there.
I know. Wendy says all the time, yeah.
BTK, he knows because he has cameras all over.
Ah,
They're not cameras, Jane, they're birds. The birds aren't real.
That's right, the birds. Good.
That's funny.
And by the way, DTK, this is me slowly morphing into Jerry Garcia.
There you go. Nice.
Kindred spirits, brother.
Longer lifespan.
Hi, David.
Hi, Hayden.
Hi, David from Peru.
Hello from Peru. Hey, Gabby, how are you?
All great. Thank you.
All right, so to
Hong
honor
Kong.
time, we're going to get rolling right now since it's the top of the hour. So first thing, my name is David Taylor Klaus, and I'm going to start with what I don't want you to know about me. And that's that I have been comparing myself to every other brilliant session presenter the entire time. So, I mean, even listening to Jenny, everybody who's gone before, I'm like, oh my God, how's this one going to go? So letting that one go. What I do want you to know about me is though I'm approaching 30 years as a serial entrepreneur, my work is now the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life. And I describe it as I reintroduce successful entrepreneurs to their families. What I do want you to know about me as well is that the reason I'm here in this life, this time around, is to unearth and unleash the power of the heart. It's really edgy for me to say that because I don't share that in public a lot. And my pulse is now throbbing in my ears just saying it out loud. But today, in this brilliant session, Rich gave me the title Prepare for Day 1000. And the purpose of this is it's a new way for you to create your future. And I get to share something here that opened up my life by opening up my heart. And it's something that I used with every single client for the last dozen years. Now I get to adapt something that's a one-to-one intimate face-to-face experience to a virtual gathering. So let's play. So first things first, you're gonna need a journal because you're gonna need to capture stuff that comes up for you. So if you'll go ahead now while I get started and grab something to write on and have it handy. And in a little bit, I'm gonna do a visualization with you. And so what I'm gonna ask is that when you come back from the visualization, when it's done, don't get into the chat, stay with yourself, stay on mute, and then I'm gonna start running through some questions with you. All right, so let's flash back. So I'm gonna go back to 1995. These are the heady early days of the internet. It's right at the beginning of Alan Greenspan's irrational exuberance and all the dot-com lunacy. I had been in technology, and my wife's best friend, someone I'd known since I was a teenager, Beth, had been working in music and on the creative side. And we partnered on a project for FIFA, for the World Cup, to do a live experience. And FIFA ran out of money long before they ran out of project. So Beth and I didn't get to push that one all the way through, but we realized we really liked working together. So over beer and chicken wings with no plan, no vision, just guts, we launched an internet strategy and web development company in the fourth quarter of 1995. We were wickedly early. We were so early that we had to teach people what the internet was before we could sell them a website. And in fact, after we sold the first website, I then spent the next 3 days learning how to code so I could build the website. So now jump ahead 5 years. We had been working with startups and still-ups, public companies, private companies, a whole wide range. But we always ended up getting lumped in with just the marketing folk. And I say that because we had a lot of experiences with late stakeholders. Somebody would come in from the product side and say, oh my God, you built this whole thing, but it doesn't match our product line anymore, or where we're moving. Or the CEO would come in and say, literally had this, the day we're launching, it goes, why isn't it blue? So we had late stakeholder problems all the time. And I realized that we needed to get into the room with the C-suite for every project. I started experiencing something weird when I got into the room with those folk. I didn't care what the vision and mission and values of the companies were. That stuff they stuck up on the wall and they never really looked at. What I wanted to know was, what made them special? Why were they here? And I noticed that there were 5 usually pudgy white guys in the room. I'd get either crickets or 3 or 4 different answers. Then I started to notice that when they didn't know what they were there for, what made them special, what made them unique, and they brought that to the company, fine. Flat culture, flat growth, flat revenue, it had an impact there. But when they brought that home, that lack of self-awareness and connection to direction, that was toxic. So fast forward another 5 years, it's now 2005. It's the 10th anniversary of our company. Realize like not even 7% of companies ever see 10 years. So everything looked great on the surface, right? I've been married to a woman I'd known since I was 11. We've been married for over a dozen years. We had 3 kids in private school, the big house, 2 dogs. But after 10 years of running on autopilot, I had lost track of who I was, what I wanted, why I was here, what I was meant to be doing. There's a saying that when you don't know where you're going, you'll get there. And we did, and I did, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the team we had created. I didn't like the work that we were doing. I didn't even like the clients we were working with. And it got to the point where every time I turned the doorknob to walk into the office, my stomach turned. And it had me standing on the proverbial bridge, ready to jump. And what kept me here, what kept me going, was a fact that I had learned that children of parents who commit suicide are 50 times more likely to kill themselves. And that's not the legacy that I wanted for these 3 amazing children that we were raising. So the short version is lots of therapy, community, family, love, and eventually coaching. That's how I turned my life around. And early in my coaching journey, I uncovered a planning technique, a cool exercise that I've morphed and I use with every single client. So here's the rub. Companies suck at planning because people suck at planning. And every strategic planning session I've ever been involved in runs into the same thing. As soon as the first person comes up with, so the exercise is, where do you want to be in 5 years? Who do you want this company to be? The first thought that somebody comes up with, somebody says out loud and everybody's thinking in their head, oh great, first step. So they get wrapped up in the how immediately. It takes a lot of discipline not to get caught up in the how, because that's what we're trained to do. But it's paralyzing. So what we do is play with planning backwards. And it's about creating a clear and resonant picture of what that desired future state is. And when you stand in that place and look back at where you are now, it's a lot narrower range. It's a lot easier to start planning to move forward. So it's planning backwards. And that's what we're going to play with. So this is where we're going to start the visualization. So if you'll take just a moment to get settled and grounded, you'll sit in your seat or wherever you are. Get your feet grounded on the floor. Let your eyes begin to close. Take a deep breath in and hold it for just a beat, and then exhale. Going to continue taking deep breaths, and as you do, notice any tension. Notice any tension in your feet or your ankles. Just begin to let that melt away. Moving up into your calves and your shins and your knee. Any tightness or tension, begin to let that melt away. And start to notice your thighs and your hips and where they're contacting the chair. And any tension with this next exhale, let that tension and tightness melt out. Notice your stomach, your back, and up into your ribs. Begin to shift around to loosen any tension and tightness there, and with this exhale, let that melt away as well. Notice the zoom tightness in your shoulders, in your arms and your hands. Begin to let that just melt away. As you take another deep breath, bring your attention to your neck, your face, the back of your head, your scalp. You're going to loosen any tension that's there as well. So with this next breath, picture yourself outside in a familiar, wide open space. And as you're there, a massive and graceful bird of prey lands just next to you. And with a reassuring nod from the bird, the invitation is for you to climb up on the bird's back. And notice how comfortable and safe you feel as you do. And feel the power as the bird spreads his wings and begins to rise. And again, noticing how comfortable and safe you feel, look around. Notice the view. And the bird continues to climb. And as you rise, look up, look around again. Notice the ease with which you're rising. And just as you notice a thin layer of clouds above, you dip through them and rise above. What you become aware of is where this bird is taking you is a chance to meet you 20 years ahead. Now, you may not yet be clear where the bird is taking you, but as he dips a wing and gracefully starts to descend and dips through the clouds, notice what comes up. What do you know? Where are you heading? And as it continues the graceful spirals of descent, notice when the geography starts to get familiar. And as you get lower, you start to notice a dwelling. Notice what that dwelling looks like and what's around it. And where this version of you 20 years ahead is chosen to be. As the bird touches down gently just outside that dwelling, and you climb down and thank the bird for the lift. Look around, take in the sights, the sounds, the smells. What are you feeling? What are you noticing? Now you head towards the dwelling. And since the person you're visiting is you 20 years ahead, they're ready to greet you. And as they open the door to greet you, what do you notice? What do they look like? What's the sense you get? What's the energy? What are they wearing? What comes up in you as you encounter them? So they invite you in because you have a chance to have a conversation. And you're both aware it's not a long visit, but it's a chance to connect. And so as you walk inside their space, notice how they've chosen to live and what's around them. And as you get to wherever it is that you're going to have your conversation and settle in, the first question you get a chance to ask is, what's the most important thing to pay attention to over the next 20 years? And know that you don't have to make sense of the answer now. Receive the answer with gratitude and unpack it later. Next question you get a chance to ask is, what are the pivotal events that are coming? Now again, this one isn't a long visit. There are more opportunities to connect in the future. But for now, it's time to head out. And as you turn back towards the door, your host stops you for a moment because they've got a gift to offer. So as you accept the gift and thank your host and head out the door, just for a moment, pause and notice the view that your host sees every day when they come out. Take in the sights and sounds again. As you bid farewell to your host and head back towards your winged steed, and climb back up on the bird's back and settle in as the bird begins to rise. Take a deep breath. Know that this was just the first chance for a visit, and there's more to come. As the bird continues to rise and begins to approach the clouds again, as you're headed back, he rises through the clouds, only to dip a wing and start the descent again. Take a deep breath. Know that whatever you remember is just what you're supposed to remember. And taking another deep breath. Know that it may not make sense yet, but you'll have a chance to unpack the answers as you go. As the bird takes another graceful turn and sets down gracefully and gently, climb down off his back. Take a breath. And open your eyes and come on back. So again, stay just with your own thoughts. Grab your journals or whatever you're going to write with. And give you a couple questions to help you capture that experience so you have it and have it with you. So take a moment. Where did you start? Where was the big open space you chose to start from? Just take another few seconds to capture some notes that'll help you remember. And now switch to, where did you go? What was that dwelling like? Where was it? Capture the scene and the surroundings. Take just a couple minutes to capture that.
Can't hear you, David.
Thank you. So when the person you visited opened the door, what did they look like? What was your experience of seeing them? And what energy did you get? Take about a minute to capture that. All right, now take just a couple of quick notes to jot what their space looked like. And then we'll get to the three really meaty questions. So when you asked what's the one thing that's important for you to pay attention to over the next 20 years, what did they share? All right, and the second question you got to ask was what were the pivotal events that were ahead of you? What did they share about that? All right, and the last one is, what was the gift they gave you before you left? Okay, now that you've captured the experience and what came out of it, here's the fun part. So the person you visited, this future version of yourself, they have people in their community, in their world around them. And so imagine if those people that live around your future self had a nickname for them, what would it be? And what I want to encourage you to do is, because I watched a number of you with your eyes go up immediately, start to notice what came up immediately when I asked you that. What's the nickname that the people around your future self use for them? How are they known in their community? So who wants to come on and share the name? Because we're going to play with that name for a bit. Andrew, I couldn't tell if you were raising your hand or moving your hair.
TK, I will.
Okay, hey, Parisa.
Hey there. Let me take myself off. Hello.
Hello.
Long-time
Long-time
Sage.
listener, first-time caller. So what's the name that came up for you?
Sage.
Sage. And tell me how you experienced her.
A centered peace, a centered being.
Say more.
She was, when she opened the door, she was smiling. It was good that she welcomed me in. There was a question there. She was smiling. She was calm. There was just there's just a presence, a being, a calmness. I'm not finding the right word, but she just was or is. She
Just
didn't need
is.
to be any more, any less. And it felt peaceful. It felt soothing.
Yeah. So is there some other word with it that captures the energy as well? Or does Sage capture her completely?
Maybe there's a knowing, or she wasn't anxious. So that's why, like, centered peace, like one of your earlier questions, or the gift actually she gave me, was like centered peace.
Yeah. Centered peace. Thanks. We're going to do something with that in just a minute. Who else wants to come on? Chris? And then Sandra.
Okay, so what is it you're asking?
Share the name with us.
The name of the community?
Your future self. The name that their community knows him by.
So so I'm not sure if I misunderstood your question earlier. So I wrote down, what is the nickname of the future self community? That's not what you're asking me now.
It's actually how his community knows him. What's his nickname? I saw that, Katrina. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's what's your future self's nickname?
My future self's nickname. Okay.
Yeah.
What? I answered the question wrong. I'm looking at what I wrote. I'm just going to say what I wrote. What is the nickname of the future self community? And I said builders.
All right. So tell me about the man you met.
It was me.
Spoiler alert. Yes.
Yeah. Everything about the scene that I revisited was very similar to my current reality, except 20 years later, I am 20 years older, and I was left, my takeaway from the experience was a level of contentment with my current life, because my life in 20 years time is actually very similar to what I have currently.
Great.
And that was actually quite nice to experience.
Yeah, great awareness. Good, because that'll actually, when we get to one of the ways to use that, that'll reinforce it, I think. Sandra, what came up for you? Who did you meet?
Yes, so the nickname that came up first before I started overthinking it was Mrs. Impossible.
Say again?
Mrs. Impossible.
Mrs. Impossible.
Yes. And I don't know, the person I met was very friendly, very happy to see me, very kind, wide open arms for a big hug. And I don't know, she didn't want me to worry about anything.
So you've heard Rich talk about, his technique of what would Rich do? And in the Christian communities, you have what would Jesus do, the little latex bands that people wore. You have the same opportunity with your future self to play the same game. It's when you're looking at an issue or an opportunity, looking at it through the lens of what would Mrs. Impossible do. Being able to look at things through the lens of your future self. Perspective work is a very powerful component of coaching, and you've built now a perspective that you can use to navigate anything, right? How would your future self see this opportunity or see this situation? And because the truth is, she's already in you. The game is, like Michelangelo talked about sculpture. It's not carving the figure from the stone, it's freeing the figure from the stone. Our work is chipping away everything that isn't that instance of our future self to move in that direction. And Chris, being able to see now that the life 20 years from now is going to be not that much different, that makes the journey more about expansion and deepening rather than cleaving off the parts that aren't. You know, there are other ways to play with it too. So first thing I want to ask you to do is right now, and unfortunately, I don't know how to do it from an iPhone or an iPad. I couldn't figure out how, but for those of you that are on a laptop or a computer, roll over your video in the Hollywood squares. And when you see the 3 dots, pull down and go to rename and change your Zoom name to your future self name. The one that came up before you started overthinking, the first one. I'm putting mine up too. And look around at who's in the room. Yeah, and by the way, if you're on an iPad or if you're on a tablet or a phone, type it into the chat so that we can see who you are. Admor. Nice, Gilad. Love. Cat the creator. Like that the spelling is so brand on. That's cool. The builder, Mr. At Ease. Jenny's playful sage. I've met Jima. Dream warrior. No fear over here. Kingmaker. Joy baby, the disruptor. Wise woman, mental architect. Seb, I like Yoda. That's great. Beauty's so weird. Beautiful soul. Flashy, fun fairy. All right, Gemini. Love that. I like that you put your name next to it too. This is another opportunity to play with one of the concepts that Rich talks about when he talks about a goal is a place to come from. This is absolutely a place to come from. So look at where your future self is already showing up and look at where you can unleash that future self even more. When you're looking at choices as you move forward, this can be a super practical tool, as in A or B, which one is going to move me closer to or farther away from living as my future self, living into that and coming from that being. Your deepest impact is in the emergence of that vision of who you be. You know, it's interesting. I don't remember which of the 28 calls that we've been on together, somebody mentioned it, the quote from Jung, that we do not see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. That's what this is all built upon. Now with this glimpse of your future self, you get to see the world through that lens and see yourself through that lens. So I wanted to open it up with to anybody who wants to play with that concept or have any questions. Gilad, or sorry, Admor.
It's so funny. Do you know the meaning, David?
No, I don't remember.
So just for context, he's kind of like the wise, elderly, spiritual leader of, it can be in a religious way, but it can also be just in a spiritual way. And it's a nickname my best friends gave me over a decade, but maybe a decade. Part of it is to laugh at me, part of it is real. But in the last 2 or 3 years, I looked back at it actually, and there's so much in it that I knew who I want to be. And there's a force keep pulling me back to, it's like being the spiritual leader, which is, you know, a title, but more the practice of it. And it's amazing that this was my nickname, and this is the word that came up when you asked that.
How is he, as that spiritual leader energetically, how is he already showing up?
Now,
Yeah.
to be completely honest, I don't see it always. Like, people see it in me many times, but and I
Can you
asked,
see the nods around the room?
and I asked Jenny on the call, because I have this other place in me that's like so effing driven, but what people see is more of that.
Are you making up that they're mutually exclusive?
Sorry?
Are you making up that they can't exist together?
I'll say yes. I can't, I didn't find a way yet to maybe bring them together as a joint force. But the presence of the person I met was way more, it was peace. I met peace. Yeah, it was, this was the gift he gave me. This was the person I met, just peace. So I'm not sure how it shows up now.
You know, you have an opportunity to explore what everybody else is, becoming aware of what everybody else is already seeing in you.
I'm not sure. It's kind of like I am this person. I'm not sure how to be this person in a way too, you know. I see my business built around that more. And to be honest, sometimes I feel like I'm hiding behind like more cool titles than what where my heart desire. Don't like that. I really don't like that.
And what is it that your heart desires, Admor?
A world without those titles. To give context to that, I was a basketball player and I served in the special forces in Israel, and those are two really cool titles. When you say to people, the conversation stops right there, because once they hear that, they get excited, and there's nothing more deep than that to explore about the person, about me. And I see a world where people care a lot about titles, about the achievements, about all of those like great metrics. And for people who kind of like experience success in this way, this is all other people see in them. And so the moment you say I'm a basketball player, like, oh, that's awesome, and you know, the conversation ends right there. There's no curiosity around it. There's so much in us as human beings that I feel if we shed those titles, trying to fit people into boxes, into our own perception of what this person is, this is the world I want to live in.
And that's the world that you have the opportunity to create.
Yeah.
And the more you allow Admor to show up, the more you dive into what it is that we already see in you, the less the labels are necessary. For you, it stands in the way of connection. We talked about changing the way that people connect.
Yeah, I don't have much to say. Like it just sounds right.
More to come.
Thank you.
Who else had their hand up?
Thank you, David. It really came in the right timing for me.
You're welcome. Look forward to our next conversation. Who else had a question or wanted to share something? Gemini? Sorry? Flashy Fun Fairy.
Yes, I was quite surprised that this came to me. I wanted to disregard the flashy part because it felt very like conceited and like full of myself. I'm inspired from the previous Brilliance session. I think it was today. The person who was teaching about how to be on video, and
Yeah, Evelyn.
she said, own whatever it is. And I thought, you know what? I like being on camera. I like being the center of attention sometimes. Like I am flashy, and I'm flashy in how I think, what I wear. That's really me. And I have been really dimming down that super kooky part of me in public, well, specifically in my business, in my work, because I've had this idea that people won't take me seriously. And that started 8 years ago when I started my coaching practice. And I thought, well, I better look really professional because I don't have any degrees and I barely finished high school, but I'm really, really good at what I do. So I have to prove myself. And after 8 years, I feel like, you know what? I freaking proved myself, okay? Like, I know I'm amazing at what I do. Can I just let myself out? But I still have that little voice like, oh, well, people won't take you seriously if you're, super colorful and sort of eccentric, and like, I can't charge as much as, I want to charge if I'm, and I know it's all a story, but it's something that sort of is temporarily right now at odds with this, flashy fun fairy title, which is so
But
me.
that's exhausting.
I know.
Right? To be contained is exhausting.
Yeah.
Right? So for you, rewatch Hayden's Brilliant session as soon as it's posted, but through the lens of Flashy Fun Fairy.
Ah. Okay.
Right? It's your weird that makes you, what is it? Hayden, what was the title? Dream Warrior, what was the title?
What makes you weird makes you money.
Yeah, I was there and that was amazing, and I'm getting so inspired.
Right,
Like,
so
yeah, I'm
through
bringing
this
it
lens
back.
this time.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Aaron, I'm just so curious about the Rippler. Is that back to whoever posted ROI, the ripple of impact?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, and it's a function of the discussion we had with Rich this morning. I am going to be the one that helps people have massive impact. So there's going to be a ripple of my effect.
Going to be?
Already, there already has been. But in 20 years, there'll be even more ripples. The ripples will be so big, it's going to be freaking tidal waves.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions?
I had a
Yeah,
quick
Joy Baby.
So my first thought when your question was, I think it was, what does the community say that your nickname is? And my initial thought is, depends on who you're asking. Because there's a community that I am engaged in who just see me as joyful exuberance, and they call me Joy Baby. And then there's a community that I'm engaged in who sees me as a disruptor. And so I was wondering, because I don't see them as mutually exclusive, I think you can be a joyful disruptor. Right? But I was wondering, I don't know, I think part of me is having trouble making sense of what it means to be known differently by different communities.
You mean to show out to, ooh. Are you showing up differently, or?
I don't think so. And
Ah.
I don't think so.
That's fascinating. So I'm more curious about what it would be to show up as the joyful disruptor.
Oh, I like that.
Give yourself a frame to show up in. You can't relabel yourself, but moving with clarity through the world as joyful disruptor.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see how the communities shift their perception of you when you show up in that.
I really like that, because I think that's what I aspire to be, right? Is I aspire to disrupt things in really happy, joyful ways. Like, disruption does not always have to be negative, and it doesn't have to have that kind of that feeling behind it. That disruption is always bad. So I really like that.
Yeah, I'd like to see how she shows up.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah. Right, anyone else? Or are we complete? Tootie, beauty.
Honestly, I have no idea where that nickname came from, which makes it kind of interesting and fascinating. Because it's...
Who did you meet?
I had trouble picturing her, but her energy was peaceful and serene. And I had flashes of my mom, so myself as I age. Yeah.
We met a really powerful woman this morning on Evelyn's call. Where does she play in all this? The protector.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of different facets. And woman this morning wasn't the protector. Woman this morning was, she was difficult. And
yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a softness to beauty. There's none of the events or momentous events she told me about had anything to do with building a business. Because that was just a given. Yeah. It's all about kids going to college, finding my happy beach. Yeah, so I think there's something within that theme there.
Yeah, there's a rich opportunity for you. I don't know if you have a meditative practice. Even if you don't, those moments when you're still fuzzy when you first wake up, those moments as you're falling asleep when you start to get fuzzy, those are theta waves in the brain. And you get a lot of insight and opportunity to have more of this conversation with her. And this is for any of you. For the next couple nights, keep something by your bed to capture. Not a phone, pen and paper. Listen to Laurie Shires. Pen and paper, and capture it. Capture what additional insights or messages you get from your future self, because there's more coming. And if you journal more. Thanks, Beauty. Ernest? And I see you too, Needless.
Thanks. Thank you. This was a great visualization. I think I have this question. I'm wondering if anybody else has had the same experience in regards to, coming up with a nickname. I didn't necessarily have one. It was just me, but it was more authentically me. I guess the path that I've been struggling with throughout the intensive, even before that, was in regards to getting in touch, like peeling back the layers and getting in touch with that essential person, that essential being. And so what I saw, 20 years into the future, was the person that was himself rather than having like a descriptive nickname. So I'm not sure how that lands. And what,
no, what's important is that landed for you,
Yeah.
that there was clarity there, that it's that unfiltered, unfettered version of you, right?
Mm.
So yeah, that's, if a name doesn't surface, but that clarity did, that works. Hey, Ernest, there are not rules about this one.
Thank you.
Needless.
Hi. So it's interesting. First I thought, oh, the nickname must be doer.
Mm.
I'm a doer. And I thought, no, that's not the person that opened the door. The person that opened the door was needless. They didn't need me to do anything. They didn't need to do anything. There was just the presence of the moment. And if I wind that back, I think it's interesting because part of what comes up for me a lot is I worry. I am a person that worries a lot. And I tend to be a pretty anxious person because I move so quickly. And when things aren't moving and happening as quickly as I need them to be, it starts me to worry. And that was part of the message that I got was, it's like, you don't need to worry. Your life is great. Your life is great now. Your life will be great. It will work out.
I mean, you got the invitation to lean into the being side, the human being instead of the human doing.
Mm-hmm.
More breathing. Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the do, and what's beautiful about this is that's not even how you get there. It's not replacing anything, it's adding the being along with it. Nothing is going to stop you. You do doing extremely well, and you get a lot of joy out of it. Adding the being piece will just amplify the joy you get out of all the things you're accomplishing right now. Breath. All right, one more insightful. I saw you.
Thanks for this. I thought it was really great. I think the thing that surprised me the most were the other details that came up. Like, I don't know if the your winged transport has any significance or not, but when I pictured mine, it was a pterodactyl, and I thought, what the hell? So that was fine, and I took it, you know. And after I visited my future self and came back out to get back on it, what I thought was, you're a badass with ancient ties. And I thought, okay, that's interesting, you know. So I'm going to explore that a little bit more.
And that percolated up as insightful?
Well, it was interesting to me, the stuff that just came up as you're going through the whole thing.
And that's great. I'm glad you said that, because that's great stuff to capture. And the reason I walked through each of those questions is normally we get to unpack, you know, what gave you the ride. And we've seen pterodactyls, you know, the eagles from The Hobbit, some super specific things, lots of dragons. So people have their own version of it. And that may offer you insight or not, but it's always something good to play with. And noticing the thoughts that percolated while you were in there, that's great.
Thank you. That's good.
Badass with ancient ties. All right, so again, the invitation is play with this and play with this more. And if you want to reach out, I'd love to play with it with you. But for you, please really notice what percolates up from this. Notice where you start seeing your future self showing up here in the rest of the intensive, during the day, and as you move forward. The more you get to peel away that isn't your future self, the sooner you really begin to embody him or her. Thanks for coming and playing.
Thank you,
Thank you,
David.
David. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
David.
That was amazing.
Sending you so much love.
Thank you so much.
good.
Insightful. Thank you.
David, and I enjoyed our chat.
Thank you so much, David. That was really
Thanks,
great.
DTK. That was adequate. Just kidding. Love you. Thank you so much.
Nice.